Rachel Monroe had been counting down to her daughter Emma's graduation day for months. It was more than just a ceremony. It was the culmination of years of sacrifice, silent hopes, and unconditional love. From the moment Emma had been accepted into the university's pre-med program, Rachel had charted each academic milestone like stars across the night sky. Daniel, her husband of 25 years, had seemed distracted lately, but Rachel had chalked it up to work stress. He had been commuting more, traveling more, glued to his phone. They hadn't been intimate in weeks, but Rachel, ever patient, had told herself they were just in a lull. After all, she had stood by him through 2 layoffs, the death of his father, and the exhausting years of child-rearing. They were a team. She had no reason to doubt that. The auditorium was buzzing with excitement. Proud parents swarmed the rows of metal chairs, craning their necks to get a glimpse of their graduates in the sea of black caps and gowns. Rachel clutched a bouquet of white lilies, Emma's favorite, and the custom card she had handwritten the night before. A single sentence was scrawled at the bottom in looping cursive: "You are my legacy." As the ceremony began, Emma's name was called near the middle of the alphabet. Rachel's heart leapt. She rose with the crowd and clapped, tears of joy forming in her eyes as Emma accepted her diploma. Her daughter waved, a wide smile stretching across her face, and Rachel waved back with the unfiltered adoration of a mother who had given up so much: her career, her time, even parts of herself, to ensure this moment came to life. Then, as the applause died down and the next name was called, Daniel leaned toward her, his voice barely a whisper. "We need to talk. After the ceremony, it can't wait." Rachel blinked. The words hung between them like an unwelcome fog. She nodded slowly, heart catching in her chest. Her thoughts scrambled to make sense of what was so urgent. After the last student walked across the stage and the graduates tossed their caps in the air, families swarmed the lawn outside, the golden hour casting a perfect light over smiling faces and flashing cameras. Emma ran to them, and Rachel enveloped her in a tight embrace. "You did it, baby. I'm so proud of you," Rachel whispered, her voice thick. "I couldn't have done it without you," Emma beamed. Daniel posed for a few photos. Rachel noticed the way his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. Something felt off. She knew it wasn't her imagination anymore. When Emma ran off to hug her friends and faculty, Daniel gently touched Rachel's elbow. "Now, please, let's go over there." They walked a few feet away to a quiet corner under a tree. Rachel turned to him, still clutching the bouquet of lilies, her heart already bracing. Daniel didn't stall. He looked her in the eye and said calmly, too calmly, "I'm leaving." "No, I'm leaving you. I've met someone else. We've been together for 6 months now. It's serious. I didn't want to tell you today, but I can't keep pretending." The words didn't make sense. They fell from his mouth like foreign syllables Rachel couldn't comprehend. She stood there, unmoving, as the sound of celebration surrounded her like a cruel joke. Daniel had the decency to look ashamed. "I know the timing is horrible, but there's never a good time for this. I've been unhappy for a long time. I tried to make it work, Rachel, but I can't do this anymore." Rachel's hands trembled. The lilies dropped to the ground. Her eyes searched his face for something: remorse, doubt, hesitation. But all she found was a steely resolve that gutted her. She wanted to scream. She wanted to slap him. But instead, she drew in a breath so deep it hurt and turned her gaze toward the crowd. There, in the distance, Emma laughed with her friends, spinning in her gown, free and full of life. Rachel swallowed hard. "You're a coward, Daniel," she said softly, "and you just chose the worst moment of your life to prove it." She turned and walked away, her heels crunching over the petals of the fallen bouquet. She didn't look back. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction. That night, alone in the house they once built together, Rachel poured herself a glass of wine and wandered into the room they once called the study. It had long since become a storage room, piled with boxes of toys Emma had outgrown and framed awards Rachel had never bothered to hang. She found her old drafting table shoved against the far wall, dusty but intact. She ran her fingers along its edge, memories stirring. Once she had designed buildings that caught the attention of real estate moguls. She had won an award at 27 for a community center in downtown Milwaukee. She had been recruited by firms in New York and Chicago, but she had said no. She wanted to be a mother first. Daniel had needed her. Emma had needed her. Rachel sat down, opened a sketchbook, picked up a pencil. The silence in the house didn't feel like grief anymore. It felt like possibility. Rachel didn't sleep that night. She stared at the ceiling for hours, the ghost of Daniel's words replaying in her mind. "I've met someone else." The simplicity of the sentence made it all the more cruel. No apology, no struggle, just a calm detachment that stung worse than rage. She rose before dawn, still wearing the same dress from the graduation. She made herself coffee, not because she needed caffeine, but because she needed something to do with her hands. The kitchen felt hollow without Emma's laughter or even Daniel's newspaper rustling. The silence wasn't peaceful, it was foreign. She sipped from the mug slowly, staring out the window as the sunrise turned the sky a mournful shade of orange. Rachel spent the next few days moving like a ghost through the house. She didn't tell Emma. Her daughter was basking in the glow of achievement, fielding job offers and celebration dinners, and Rachel wouldn't stain that with her own heartache. Instead, she smiled when Emma called, made jokes about the graduation photos, and said she and Daniel were just taking some time to reevaluate things. The lie burned on her tongue. But Rachel had always been good at putting others first. Still, a voice inside her had begun to stir, soft, hesitant, but undeniably hers. It asked questions she hadn't dared think in years. What if you didn't try to fix this? What if you didn't beg him to stay? She returned to the study 2 days later. This time, she came with a purpose. She pulled out all her old architecture files from the closet, binders of sketches, portfolios, reference books with coffee-stained covers. Her fingers traced the lines of past designs, and a forgotten fire lit behind her eyes. Rachel had once been brilliant. People used to tell her she had a gift. Before Emma, before Daniel, before PTA meetings and grocery lists, she had dreams that stretched across skylines. She had drawn parks, schools, housing for single mothers, structures that didn't just serve but healed. But every time an opportunity came, something pulled her back. Emma's health scare in 2nd grade, Daniel's job loss, the slow erosion of her confidence. She opened her laptop for the first time in months. The screen flickered to life like an old friend reluctantly waking up. After updating the software and digging out her stylus, she started drawing again. Tentatively at first, straight lines, shaky curves. Then, gradually, a structure began to form, something modern, light-filled, sustainable. A community space inspired by the one she once designed in Milwaukee. But this one would be better. It would be hers. Hours passed. She didn't notice the time. When she finally looked up, her coffee had gone cold and the sun had dipped below the horizon. Her back ached and her wrist throbbed, but for the first time in days, her chest didn't hurt. She decided not to cry for Daniel anymore. Over the next week, Rachel built a routine. Mornings began with a long walk through the neighborhood, earbuds in, playing playlists of instrumental music that stirred her creativity. Afternoons were for drafting. Evenings, she studied architecture trends, green building certifications, software tutorials. She found herself enrolled in a free online masterclass for women returning to the workforce. Rachel breathed deeply. One morning, while researching design competitions, she stumbled across an announcement. A global architecture challenge hosted by Novara Group, one of the most prestigious firms in North America. They were accepting entries for a community-focused design, with an emphasis on social impact. The prize wasn't just money, it included a year-long contract and executive mentorship. Rachel felt her hands tremble, then she clicked register. For the next month, she poured everything into her design. She named the project Phoenix Rising, a nod to rebirth, a metaphor she clung to every day. Her concept revolved around a multi-use community hub in underserved urban areas, blending a library, health clinic, childcare space, and rooftop garden. She designed not just for aesthetics, but for dignity. She worked long hours, skipped meals, and slept with graph paper next to her bed. In case inspiration struck at 3 a.m., she didn't talk to Daniel. Not even when he texted asking if she wanted to talk things through. She blocked his number. But she did tell Emma. One Saturday afternoon, Rachel invited her daughter over for lunch. Emma arrived with a bottle of wine and that same infectious smile, but the moment she walked through the door, she noticed the drafting table, the mood boards pinned to the walls, and Rachel's face, focused, glowing, alive. Rachel took a deep breath. "I'm entering a design competition. Actually, I've already entered. It's for a redevelopment project through Novara Group." Emma's eyes widened. "Wait, the Novara Group, that's huge. Are you serious?" Rachel laughed. It sounded like music. "Completely." Emma looked at her mother for a long time. Then she whispered, "I've never seen you like this before, not even when I was little. You look fierce." Rachel blinked, touched. "I feel like I remember who I was, and I think she's still in here." Emma reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "She never left, Mom. You just put her on pause." They didn't talk about Daniel. Not that day. Instead, they cooked dinner together, watched an old romantic comedy, laughed until their sides hurt. When Emma left, she hugged Rachel for a long time and whispered, "You're going to win." Rachel didn't say anything, but a part of her believed it too. 3 days before the submission deadline, she hit send. The design files zipped and uploaded into the submission portal. She exhaled and leaned back in her chair, hands trembling, not from fear, but from something closer to liberation. She had done it. She had come back to herself. Now she just had to wait. Rachel didn't expect anything, not really. She had submitted the design and told herself that was the victory, reclaiming her passion, finishing something that mattered. But the days that followed weren't as tranquil as she'd imagined. Her mind circled constantly, replaying every detail of her submission. Was the lighting concept too bold? Would the jury appreciate the integrated clinic spaces? A week passed, then 2. Rachel buried herself in routine to silence the anxious hum beneath her ribs. She returned to morning walks and late-night sketches. She even helped Emma apartment hunt near the hospital where she'd just landed a residency. Life moved forward in cautious steps, but something in Rachel had shifted permanently. She was no longer surviving. She was becoming. Then, one bright Thursday morning, the email came. Subject line, "Congratulations, finalist, Novara Group Global Design Challenge." Rachel read it 3 times, eyes wide, heart thundering. Her breath caught in her throat. Not only had she made it to the final round, she had been selected as one of 5 global finalists to present her design in person at Novara's headquarters in Chicago. Flights, hotel, and logistics would be covered. Presentations were scheduled in 2 weeks. She set the mug down slowly and just stood there. Then she laughed, really laughed. Her phone buzzed. "Emma." Rachel answered breathlessly, "I made the finals." Emma screamed so loudly she had to pull the phone away. I told you, Mom, this is huge. This is everything." Rachel found herself crying without even realizing it. Tears of joy, disbelief, and something more elemental, validation. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind. Rachel dug out old blazers, bought new heels, and updated her portfolio with a fresh logo, Rachel Monroe Design. She rehearsed her pitch over and over, refining each word, each slide. Her design was solid, but she knew it had to speak. She wasn't just presenting a building. She was presenting a vision. She arrived in Chicago the night before the presentation and checked into a sleek hotel downtown. The city's skyline reminded her why she fell in love with architecture in the first place. She didn't sleep much. Her mind buzzed with nerves, but when morning came, she was ready. The Novara Group headquarters sat like a monument of glass and steel along the riverfront. Rachel walked through its revolving doors with her head high, heart pounding. The lobby smelled of polished stone and espresso. Assistants guided the finalists, 2 from Europe, 1 from Brazil, another from Canada, and Rachel into a private lounge. They were all younger, sleek, tech-forward. One of them had a nose ring and a prototype VR headset. Rachel felt a flicker of intimidation, but then she reminded herself, experience wasn't her weakness, it was her edge. When it was her turn to present, she stepped onto the stage and took a breath. The judges sat in a semicircle, executives, designers, even a well-known sustainability advocate. Cameras recorded every angle. Rachel began. She didn't open with specs or budgets. She opened with a story. She told them about a young girl in Milwaukee who spent afternoons in a sunlit community center after school while her single mom worked. She talked about how spaces change people, how dignity could be designed. Then she let her visuals do the talking. Clean lines, accessible ramps, warm lighting, green rooftops, and communal courtyards. When she finished, the room was silent for a moment, then applause. One judge, a senior partner named Diane, leaned forward. "Rachel, where have you been?" Rachel smiled, on pause until now. That night, back in her hotel room, Rachel stood by the window, watching the river shimmer under city lights. She didn't know if she would win, but she knew she had already reclaimed something far greater. The next morning, just as she was packing to check out, her phone rang again. Unknown number. She answered cautiously. Rachel sat down. The world spun, then steadied. "You're our 2024 design fellow," he continued. "Your concept will be built in 3 cities over the next 2 years, and we'd like to bring you on board as a senior consultant. We believe in your voice." Rachel put the phone on speaker and stared at the ceiling for a moment, her eyes welling with grateful disbelief. "Thank you," she whispered. "You've just changed my life." "No, Ms. Monroe," he replied. "You changed it yourself, we just noticed." Rachel's return home from Chicago was quiet, almost anticlimactic. The cab ride from the airport passed through familiar streets, but everything looked different now, as though the colors had been turned up and the shadows stripped away. The woman who left 2 weeks ago with trembling hands was not the same one who walked back into the Monroe house with her head high and a spark in her eyes. She dropped her suitcase by the door and stood there, listening to the silence. It didn't feel heavy anymore. She made tea, she sat in the kitchen, and she smiled. Winning the Novara Fellowship wasn't just a career milestone, it was a resurrection. She hadn't just re-entered the professional world, she'd burst into it like a comet. In the following days, Rachel's inbox overflowed with interview requests, collaboration offers, and congratulatory notes from old colleagues who'd assumed she'd left the industry forever. One email, from her former professor at the University of Wisconsin, simply read, "About damn time." Rachel set up her home office in the sunroom. She didn't want to work from a corner desk anymore. She needed space, light, life. She filled the shelves with design books and plants. Emma brought over an espresso machine as a celebratory gift. Every morning felt like a new beginning. And then came the text from Daniel. "We need to talk." Rachel stared at it for a long time. She could have ignored it. Part of her wanted to, but something in her needed to close the loop, not for him, but for herself. They met at a small coffee shop on the edge of downtown. Neutral ground. He arrived in a blazer that looked a little too new, as if he were trying to impress someone. Rachel showed up in flats and a blazer rolled at the sleeves, confident, unbothered. "Rachel," he said, standing to greet her. "Daniel," she replied, sitting without offering a handshake. He looked tired. The weight of his choices had finally begun to settle on his face. "I heard about the fellowship," he began. "Congratulations, really, that's incredible." She nodded calm. "Thank you." He fiddled with his cup. "I didn't think you'd actually go through with it. Architecture. You always talked about it, but I didn't think, well, I guess I underestimated you." Rachel tilted her head. "You didn't underestimate me, Daniel. You dismissed me. There's a difference." He flinched, ever so slightly. "I made a mistake," he said quietly. "Vanessa and I, it's not what I thought it would be." "I'm not surprised," Rachel said, not cruelly but clearly. He looked at her, truly looked at her. "I don't even recognize you anymore." Rachel smiled. "That's because I stopped trying to be what you wanted." He leaned forward. "Can we start over?" She laughed, short, bright. "Daniel, you didn't just leave our marriage. You left me at our daughter's graduation like I was disposable. You don't get a reset button." There was a long pause. "I miss what we had," he said. Rachel's voice was steady. "I don't. I miss who I used to be, but she's not coming back. And honestly, I like who I'm becoming a lot more." He looked down, defeated. Rachel stood. "Take care of yourself, Daniel. I hope you find what you're looking for, but it's not here anymore." She walked away, heels clicking across the tile. Outside, the sun was high. She pulled her sunglasses from her bag, slipped them on, and exhaled. For the first time in years, she felt weightless. That evening, she hosted dinner at home. Emma brought her new boyfriend, and they sat under fairy lights in the backyard, eating grilled salmon and laughing over cheap wine. The table was surrounded not by perfection, but by presence. Rachel looked around at the joy and thought, this is enough. She didn't need Daniel. She didn't need to prove anything. She had herself. And that, finally, was everything. By late autumn, Rachel Monroe had become something of a quiet sensation in architectural circles. The press dubbed her the Phoenix Architect, a name borrowed from her winning submission, Phoenix Rising, but also reflective of her personal rebirth. Her face began appearing in design blogs, sustainability panels, and even a short feature in Architectural Digest titled Comeback of the Year. People reached out not just for her designs, but for her story. And yet, Rachel remained grounded. She kept her mornings slow, her afternoons filled with work, and her evenings sacred. She still called Emma every day, still took long walks in the crisp air, and still cooked Sunday dinners with her hands deep in rosemary and garlic. Fame hadn't changed her. It had only revealed her. One gray November morning, Rachel arrived at a civic event in Milwaukee where the city planned to break ground on its first Phoenix Rising Center. She had lobbied for the city's inclusion herself, pulling on old contacts and showing up in town hall meetings. It wasn't just a project, it was personal. It was where she had once dreamed, once paused, and now would rise. The event was modest. A stage, a crowd of local officials, media, and neighborhood families. As she took the mic to speak, she saw Daniel standing near the back. She hadn't seen him in weeks, maybe months, but there he was, hands in pockets, wearing the same coat he used to wear during Emma's soccer games. Rachel steadied her breath. She spoke about design with dignity, about buildings that welcomed people instead of intimidating them, about mothers who needed child care and students who needed light-filled libraries. She ended with a quiet promise that this would be the first of many centers, not just buildings, but beginnings. Applause followed, and after the photos and ribbon cutting, Daniel approached. "Hi," he said. His voice was careful. Rachel turned. "Daniel, I didn't come to bother you. I wanted to see what you built, what you're building." She nodded. "It's not about the building, it's about what happens inside." He looked down. "You're right." For a moment, there was silence between them. Then he asked, "Is Emma coming today?" "She's on call at the hospital," Rachel replied, "saving lives like she does." Daniel smiled faintly. "She got that from you." "No," Rachel said gently. "She got her compassion from me, her drive, that's all her." He hesitated. "I read the article about you, the one where you said your divorce woke you up. That must have hurt me to read, but it didn't. It felt true. You were asleep for a long time." Rachel didn't reply immediately. Then she said, "I wasn't asleep. I was waiting for someone to see me. Then I realized I had to see myself first." Daniel nodded. "I'm happy for you, truly." She believed him, and she appreciated it. But it didn't change anything. "Thank you," she said. "That means a lot." They shook hands. It felt final in a way that was merciful. He turned to go, then looked back. "Rachel, you were never disposable." She smiled. "Neither were you, but you made your choices, and I made mine." With that, he walked away. She watched him until he disappeared into the crowd. Rachel returned to the community center site and looked out over the empty lot that would soon be alive with voices, motion, hope. A blank space waiting to become a sanctuary. She placed her hand over her heart, not out of pain, but pride. This wasn't just her comeback. It was her creation. And it was only the beginning. Winter came early that year, blanketing the city in a hushed layer of snow before Thanksgiving. Rachel watched flakes spiral outside her studio window as steam curled from her mug of chamomile tea. The Phoenix Rising groundbreaking in Milwaukee had made local headlines, and calls for similar centers were now coming from cities she had never even visited. Her team was expanding. Her time was limited, but she felt more alive than she had in decades. One evening, Emma stopped by unexpectedly. She was bundled in her hospital scrubs and wool coat, her cheeks flushed with the chill. Rachel welcomed her with a warm hug and a bowl of lentil soup. They ate in comfortable silence for a while before Emma set down her spoon and said, "Dad called me yesterday." Rachel glanced up but didn't flinch. "Oh." "He said he's moving. Vanessa left him. He's transferring to another firm in Seattle. He wanted to say goodbye." Rachel nodded slowly. "I hope he finds what he's looking for." Emma watched her closely. "Do you ever think about it? What might have happened if he'd stayed?" Rachel smiled faintly. "I used to, but not anymore. The truth is, I was disappearing long before he left. I was waiting for someone else to bring me back. Now I know only I could do that." Emma reached across the table and took her hand. "I'm proud of you, Mom, not just for the buildings, for coming back to life." Tears welled in Rachel's eyes, soft and slow. "Thank you, sweetheart. That means everything." Later that night, after Emma had gone and the house was still again, Rachel opened an old journal she had kept tucked away for years. Inside were pages of ideas, old sketches, half-written letters never sent. At the very back, she found a letter she had started but never finished, a letter to herself. She picked up a pen and wrote, "You survived. Not just the heartbreak, but the forgetting. You remembered who you are. You are not someone's second choice. You are not a supporting role in your own life. You are the architect of your world. And the foundation you've built, it's unshakable now." She closed the journal. Outside, the snow fell softly, covering every rooftop and streetlight in a quiet blessing. The world was still, but Rachel's heart was wide awake. The next morning, she received an email. Nova Group wanted her to lead a keynote session at their international summit. Topic: Designing from the Ashes, Rebirth Through Architecture. Rachel leaned back in her chair, eyes on the ceiling, heart full. Yes, she thought. Yes, that's exactly what this is. She clicked accept. Somewhere across the city, in the early dawn light, construction began on the first Phoenix Rising Center. The hum of machinery filled the air, and with it, a new beginning. And Rachel Monroe, once invisible, once silent, now stood tall at the center of it all. The woman who had been left had finally arrived.